place of orchards and crops, and for decades the location of a phenomenal apple blossom Sunday chicken barbecue that draws thousands and funds many important community projects. We have great food in the Annapolis Valley. I can tell you that this is an event that runs with military precision, using an army of community volunteers under the genial command of longtime resident George Foote. Grafton is in the southwest corner of Kings North, home to a growing Mennonite community and mixed farming operations. Grafton is also the place where Murray Salzman created Marg's Glad Garden after Marg's death from cancer. Murray conceived the idea of raising and offering gladiolas as a donation to help deal with the often difficult costs of cancer treatment, turning his grief into a service for patients and their families throughout the region. Mr. Speaker, if I might metaphorically step outside my own riding for a moment, I'd like to visit Somerset, the community that borders on Grafton, the place where I was raised. I want to pay tribute to that community and my family who helped me understand that we are all human beings connected to each other. Somerset, when I was a child, Mr. Speaker, was a community with a 3-room school where a woodworking class might be taught by the teacher's carpenter husband, and it was still possible to swim in the deep Cornwallis River without fear of pollution. It was a place then where everyone knew each other and where people understood, to use that African proverb, that it takes a whole village to raise a child. I was raised on a family farm with my parents and grandparents, my younger sister, and my brother. My grandfather, Ernest Noss, ran a small mixed farm and left me with an appreciation for hard work and stewardship of the environment. He understood that it was necessary to look after what we were given and that it's important to leave behind more than you've received. My grandmother, Flossie Lydia Frank Noss, was proud that the Lydia part of her name was after the first Christian woman in Europe. She was an active member of the Women's Christian Temperance Union, and to my, I must admit, consternation, regularly gave talks on the evils of drink to schools throughout the county. She used the bus to regularly travel to Kentville, to visit the jail in Kentville, to bring comfort, and I expect religion, to any current prisoners. And although we lived off the beaten path, homeless, troubled men, often found their way to our doorstep expecting to be fed and provided with a place to sleep. They were never turned away, although my grandmother might expect the visitor to take a bath in exchange for a meal. And when my grandmother graduated from grade 10, long before that, she received a book from a teacher, Miss L.L. Nichols, inscribed with the words, "Strive to live worthily." I think she succeeded in that. My mother, Grace Noss-Morton, taught adults at Kings County Hospital when that was still an institution in our community. She organized a Sunday school in Somerset and for many years was the leader of a youth group. Not long before she died, I asked my mother how the youth group got started. She told me that she'd first led a CGIT group, Canadian Girls in Training, I looked it up on the internet last night, that was intended for girls only. And as the CGIT group evolved, boys in the community began to be a nuisance. They threw pebbles at the windows, they knocked at doors and ran off, and other things of the like. And some leaders, I guess, might have called the police, but of course in those days, who would you have called? Or she might have called the boys' parents to put a stop to the trouble. But my mother, rather typically, took another tack. She invited the boys in to see what was on their minds. And they told her that they were envious of the girls' opportunity to go on outings, to do crafts, to participate in activities. So my mother listened and transformed the CGIT group into what she called the Young People's Group. It endured for 25 years and provided opportunity for dozens and dozens of adolescents to do interesting things and to grow in their own maturity. And actually at our reception after the speech from the throne last week, one of our guests approached me to say that who lives in another part of the province, approached me to say that she had actually participated in that group 40 years ago. My father, John Morton, approached life with a certain stoicism. Toward the end of his own life, he was told by his physician that he had about 6 months to live. He returned home from that office visit and mowed the lawn. When I heard that, I recalled the story of the pilgrim who approached the Buddha in his garden. The pilgrim asked if you knew what that you had just one more day to live, what would you do? I'd finish hoeing this row, replied the Buddha. Mr. Speaker, these examples have influenced who I am as the families and communities all over Kings North and throughout Nova Scotia influence each of our citizens. That influence, I am sure, is at work in Black Rock, where volunteers have been welcoming guests to a monthly breakfast of delicious food, more food, and warm conversation. The influence is at work in Sheffield Mills, where volunteers pull together the phenomenon of the Eagle Watch weekends and the upcoming Harvest Fair, where I'm scheduled to milk a goat on Saturday. There are stories to tell. There are stories to tell, Mr. Speaker, about all of the villages and communities that make up the fabric of Kings North. Stories that illustrate Canning, Port William, Stars Point, Kennard, and Gibson Woods. I could linger on the gingerbread cottages at Huntington's Point, talk about the revival of Halls Harbour, and the wonderful experience of hiking to Cape Split and Scott's Bay. Or I could talk a little bit more about Scott's Bay and ask you to drop in behind Charlie Welton's house and see his mechanical inventions and see that nobody has to wait for General Motors to figure out how to invent an electric car. We could take a look at Blomidon. Mr. Speaker, the site of that magnificent cliff, the home of Bluescap from Highway number 101 in Avonport, which is in King South, always tells those of us from the valley that we're home. We could also explore Kingsport, Perot, Medford, and Delhaven, Mr. Speaker. We could linger forever with thousands of tourists looking out from the lookoff at the Minas Basin, at the vista of farms and villages that stretch breathtakingly for as far as the eye can see. Mr. Speaker, we could explore Bennett's Bay, Arlington, Kennard, and Stars Point. We could visit Chipman Brook, or stop at Baxter's Harbor to glory in the 40-mile sunset, or to look across from the Old Wharf Road for a perfect view of Cape Split. But some of these descriptions will have to await another day, or better yet, a day trip to Kings North. Maybe for the pumpkin people activity. Mr. Speaker, it is possible that I have been presenting an idyllic impression of life in Kings North. And in fact, I've wanted to show the wonderful place I have the privilege to represent. I've wanted to thank some of the people who invested so much in our political and community life. I've wanted to speak of the values and influences that have led me to this house. I've wanted to show how proud I am to stand as a member of this government and in support of the plans outlined in the speech from the throne. But of course, Mr. Speaker, all is not well. In Kings North, we have roads and bridges to repair. Too many of our citizens, young and old and middle-aged, live with low, inadequate incomes and struggle with choices between food and shelter. The Cornwallis River is no longer safe for swimming. A significant number of our citizens experience literacy problems that get in the way of opportunities. Our rural communities often feel isolated and without adequate resources. Health care, whether it's the availability of a nursing home bed or access to primary health care services, don't always match our needs. We're still overly focused on health services and not thinking enough about prevention. Mr. Speaker, as I indicated earlier, our agricultural economy is in trouble. Farmers are worried about the high cost of production, the availability of labor, and access to profitable markets. We hold conflicting opinions about agricultural land use versus residential and economic development. Mr. Speaker, these are some of the issues that concern the people of Kings North. They aren't simple issues with easy solutions. I know that the people of Kings North understand that. But I also know that we have the combination of climate, location, skills, and human spirit that are the foundation of an exciting, prosperous, inclusive future, one that promises better lives, not just for a privileged few, but for everyone in Kings North, for all Nova Scotians. Mr. Speaker, several years ago I was in Dallas and took the opportunity to visit the memorial of John Kennedy's assassination at the Book Depository Museum. On the 6th floor, there was, probably still is, an audio display, and I recall listening to the words of one of JFK's 1960 campaign speeches. He said, and I quote, We stand today on the edge of a new frontier. But the new frontier of which I speak is not a set of promises, it's a set of challenges. Mr. Speaker, we too face a set of challenges. I'm confident that our government's plan, as outlined in the speech from the throne, will address these challenges head on. I'm also confident that the citizens of Kings North are ready to support us and to work with us in the challenging days ahead. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, member, for a very interesting discussion of your riding. Would you be willing to adjourn debate?
Mr. Speaker, I adjourn the debate in reply to the speech from the throne.
There has been a motion to adjourn debate in reply to speech from the throne. Is it agreed? Agreed. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those against say nay. The motion is carried. The Acting Government House Leader, the Minister of Transportation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That concludes today's business. I have the honor of announcing the hours for Monday. They will be from 4 in the afternoon till 10 in the evening. After regular business, the routine we will have a committee of supply, begin estimates, concluding after that with the hours remaining to return to speeches in reply to the throne speech. With that, I would recommend that we rise for the weekend, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. There has been a motion for adjournment. Is it agreed? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those against say nay. The motion is carried. We stand adjourned until 4 p.m. on Monday.
Uh-huh.